All right, there you go.
Sure.
Good
evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Wow, somebody spoke back. Tonight we watched Kramer versus Kramer. So let's start by identifying the overall story. Simply put,
It's a story of what do you do when your wife leaves you and you want to keep up the standard of living with your son and your work.
okay, so can we just shorten that a little bit? Yes, that's it. That's
life in New York after your wife leaves. Or life in New York raising a child, single.
Well,
I'm not helping.
All right.
Okay. There, sonly single dad. Coping with single fatherhood. I mean,
Coping with new life, with new responsibilities.
raising a son and dealing with work.
well, that part of the raising the son, you have to feed him and house him and such. So I think they have to clothe him. So that's all part of raising him, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Who do we have as the main character?
Ted. I think his name is it Ted?
Ted Kramer.
All right.
Oh, I just realized I compared it to Ted too.
Can I ask a question?
I don't know. Can you?
How is Ted's through line separate from that overall story?
So I will turn that around. How is Ted's through line different from that?
No,
What is Ted? I know, but what is Ted dealing with?
Oh, the fallout from the divorce.
Right here, you have a single dad.
Okay.
All right.
So
So
this
and
is
the
the more
divorce
personal.
and the divorce may be there, may not. I don't know yet. We haven't decided that. So what does the dad seem to be most concerned with?
I thought. I mean, he's concerned with raising the son and stuff. But I thought his
Sure, but
personal
what is
issues
Ted
were
concerned with?
the work and being able to support him and be able to take care of everything all on
Okay.
his own.
Try to juggle the personal
juggle
with the
everything.
professional.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering where the Kramer versus Kramer part came in.
Well, then
I would tend to think that
we
would
need
be
to add the other part of it, which is the Kramer versus Kramer, which in the OS, which is
husband and wife fighting over a son.
Custody battle.
Custody battle.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, that's, I think, now the question is, I mean, we're going to see whether or not that's the subjective story or the objective story. It appears that everybody in the story is concerned with the custody battle. So you've got the attorneys, you've got the friends, you've got pretty much everybody in there except for, well, no, everybody is related to it because even the employers are related in a way because of their employment.
Away,
Yeah.
sort of thing.
Okay. And maybe we'll be able to identify what Ted's through line is a little better once we know what domain he's in. That might help.
Yeah.
Hi there. Welcome.
Oh, you.
Sorry, late.
No problem. We just started. Just identifying the through lines. We have a chance to see the movie?
I did.
Okay, excellent. Perfect. So then who is the influence character?
His wife.
Okay, everybody know what her name is?
Joanna,
All right. Any other possibilities?
the son.
The son.
All right.
The Billy.
Yeah.
Billy.
Billy.
Just. Was it just?
Billy.
Or,
Well,
is it Billy?
You know what? I think it's Billy. It's Billy.
All right. And so what if it is Ted and Joanna, what is that relationship?
Ex-lovers or exes.
Exes.
Okay. And what about Ted and Billy?
Father, son.
Now, where is the the greatest between these two, because they're not the same story. So, I mean, they're thematically, I don't think they're exploring the same issues. Which one is the sort of more emotional center than of the story compared to the other?
Well, the emphasis is on the father-son. Joanna is there as really it's kind of an antagonist. She's kind of looming in the background until she comes forward and says, "I'm going to fight, for custody." So meanwhile, we're subjectively experiencing the father-son, the attempts to, create a relationship and get over the conflicts of struggles.
Yeah, and arguably his relationship with Joanna doesn't really change. Even at the end, he still loves her. Like, he lets her go up to the son in the trial. When she's blaming herself, he's saying, no, not out loud, but...
Right, he's shaking his head, it's not your fault.
Yeah, it's like his feelings for her remain very, very clear and the same the whole way.
Yeah.
Well, and she pretty much is the same, too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at where she started and where she ended, it's, I didn't know he was going to do that. So every time she had a chance to voice what her opinion is, even during the trial, it was still not trying to destroy him or, it wasn't, there were exes, but it wasn't really about, there was no chance they were getting back together, and that was never an issue. They were sort of exes from the beginning, even though they hadn't, divorced officially. In fact, you notice that we never actually know when the divorce happens. It's really a non-issue.
Right.
I think that the ex's relationship is really, that's the Kramer versus Kramer.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that Joanna is not really an influenced character so much as just a prominent character in the overall story.
Yeah.
But it's good to explore that because they're the most obvious relationships in there, and there's some emotion in their relationship. She seems to be a lot more emotional in general. But you actually see between the two, between Billy and Ted and their great adventure, there's a lot of highs and lows in the emotional roller coaster there. So that definitely seems to be the heart of the story, which is where you find the relationship through line. Okay, so let's pop over to.
I thought too, just for the you and I montage,
Uh-huh.
them eating breakfast, that
Yes.
scene would be really fun to throw in there.
Right, you mean where they're both in their
They're
underwear
Underwear
and
and
reading the
newspaper.
paper and eating the yeah.
Oh,
It'd be a funny one just to
Yeah.
throw in there.
Oh, that's fun.
Exactly. I mean, that's essentially what it was. But the thing is that it's true in this movie. It's non-obvious because you're talking about a child parroting the parent, so it's sort of a natural image anyway.
Oh, okay.
But it is, in fact, because of the nature of the story and their relationship in the story. For a you and I. It was probably scene. It was probably a little too early because they didn't have that kind of a conflict. But they did. There was something later on that just struck me as I saw it. Now,
Are you talking about the donut? The scene where they're
Yeah.
giving the same donut?
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, the
Both he's
Yeah.
got his
the
paper.
Antiman scene, right? But anyway, it is it's certainly that parroting or mimicking or and there's no comment because one of the things you're getting there is that you and I are alike, but you're not saying no, I'm nothing alike, which is the other half of that argument.
Right.
All right. main character change or steadfast. So is Ted a change character or is he steadfast, and why? How do we know?
Or
Changed.
change. Yeah.
Okay.
The bookend scenes, the cooking the breakfast scene.
Okay, so he's learned how to cook better. Don't think
no,
that's
I also think
no. But I mean, it's a sign that he's comfortable in his role. Like he's not so out of control, overreacting to everything.
right. So what is the issue that
I have a different scene if I can
Oh,
throw it out.
okay,
there, if you
sure.
don't mind. I don't think that's wrong.
It's not.
But at the beginning, he doesn't care about Billy at all. He doesn't think about him.
right?
At the end,
oh, okay.
he's like very clear that he has taken care of Billy. He talks to him about, you're going to move. This is why. He's protecting his son. He's thinking about his son. They have a similar close relationship in the house. Like, this is a man who's come to like.
And-
in the trial, they say you never took care of your son's wishes. Or
Well, and he
something.
doesn't go to it. He doesn't challenge it because he doesn't want to hurt his son.
That's
Right.
what I thought you were gonna say.
oh, well,
I mean, but it's the same thing. It
Yes.
is that issue of putting the child first
right,
as opposed to not even really considering the child.
right, and is that the word they use in the trial? You don't care about your child. You don't have any consideration for your child's feelings, something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
So
So he's a changed character, and of course, Billy is definitely a steadfast character. I mean, he's a good foil for his father, has same sort of stubbornness and
Forgets to wash his hands after going to the bathroom.
yes, or push.
That's another you and I are just alike.
Flush the toilet. Put
Yeah.
we talked about that.
yeah.
That's a lot of time there. You might want to go back and wash your hands.
Did you just pee and then grab the donuts?
It's your donut.
Hey, pee is sterile, right? You know, that's not what's the problem. Okay.
We all are in the same house.
All right. Main character approach: doer or beer? What do we have for our main character?
He's a doer.
All right, and how do we know he's a
He's
doer?
a doer because when she left him, he took care of the kid. He made sure he got to the school and he was doing his job at work as best as he could.
Now, most of those things are things that have to do with the overall story. So the story might be requiring him to do things, but so I'm not disagreeing with him being a doer, but if it does, I don't think those are strong examples. I think you want to find something that's more personal. as an example.
When she leaves him, everything he's doing is like overly physical. He's overreacting in a physical way. Throwing stuff. I mean,
The one in the restaurant. They talk. We're gonna do this, and then he gets up and just breaks.
yeah,
the glass.
and he's
Get it all out of
Right.
the system.
And the making the breakfast.
Yeah.
I'm going to solve this problem by doing something I know absolutely nothing. I know nothing about.
Mhm, mhm.
He loses his job.
He goes and gets another.
It's like, boom, gets out the paper and he starts going, immediately finding. There's
But how do
no.
you distinguish that from the OS?
It's not. It's not a great example of that, except it is consistent.
Yes.
And it is, that one is motivated by the OS though.
Yeah.
That's if his attorney said, if you don't have a job, we don't have a case.
Right.
So, but his approach is as a doer though.
Yeah.
We don't know what domain the overall story is at this point. So it's just like the examples that were said at the beginning. They were good examples, but they weren't really personal. Him going out and getting that job and staying, I'm going to stay in this room, go get that guy, I'll talk with him now. Those are all,
Maybe even like when Joanna leaves and the first thing he does is get her suitcase and put it away. Is that a more personal?
Yeah, that is.
And
That
shoving
is.
it into the closet. And when
Or-
Billy takes the fall, he doesn't try to calm.
No, he just grabs him and runs.
Yeah, and just he doesn't even stop to think or consider any internal issues. Just
he packs up when it's clear that she's not coming home. He just packs up their stuff.
Well, he didn't. Yeah, well, she left it there, so he looked at it and he goes, and then just
no. After later.
Oh, after
when he puts
yes.
the paintings away, the photos away, and all of her clothes in boxes, and just like.
And goes around and takes all of it. Yeah. So yes, he definitely seems to be a doer.
Yeah.
Okay. And problem-solving style, is he linear or holistic? Holistic? Why? Examples.
Well, the lawyer, you need a job. I'm gonna get a job. It's very linear.
Yeah.
Kid falls, pick him up, run. I mean, it all seems very linear to me.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other examples that they're different from the doer, but
Well, his problem is very linear. That I'm the guy that gets the bacon, bakes on the bacon.
Right.
She's supposed to be taking care of everything.
Right. Okay.
That's a good one.
A more holistic person might have keyed in on the clues that were there.
Right.
And I guess if you look at his arguments during the trial, he says, "Where is it written that a mother is necessarily a better parent?" But here's the evidence, step by step. I get up in the morning, I get them to school, I fix the breakfast. It's like, example, evidence. In order to make his argument. But yeah, I can't think of anything that could be argued holistic. So,
Right. But I think you see him become aware of the holism. I think that's kind of what comes out a lot in the trial.
Yeah.
Is that he saw by being so linear, here's your job, here's my job, which is where he starts off, and couldn't do that. Everybody has their role. Let's do that, and by when he's in the trial, he's understanding a lot more what other people are thinking and feeling and such, and looking at the whole of it as opposed to, and realizing how really how linear he was looking at it, how blind that made him to other things.
I feel like the scene in the middle where he talks to Billy and says, "You're not going to understand this," is the beginning of sort of awareness of the holistic. Where he says, like, I wanted her to be a certain way. I wanted to cage her in, and that was never going to happen.
Right. I think it's sort of the acknowledging the problem.
Yeah. But it's also, I think, that's when he sort of just opened his eyes to the bigger picture. Because at the end, I felt like when he wasn't going to put Billy up in the stand, because that was going to be wrong for the Billy. That
right.
Very holistic.
Yeah.
It's small, but it's...
No. It's definitely...
No.
The linear aspect of him said, I'm going to go again. But the larger consideration is what made him pull that back. Yeah.
And you can also argue that's part of this arc from doer to beer.
Right.
Too.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. All right. Story driver, actions or decisions, and give some examples of act turns or inciting event or closing event.
Decision. Because she decides to leave.
Yep.
At the end, she decides to...
First shot of the movie.
Yeah. And the last shot of the movie, she decides to let him stay.
Right.
And then in the middle, they decide to let him go.
Right. And
the judge decides to let the mom have it. And then the second one would be...
Oh, the first, first act, second act turn?
Just that it's
I think it happened rather late. I seem to remember, that seems to be the act turn, and it was 30 or 40 minutes into
I think they buried it because I think that's why the pacing felt, not pacing, but it felt like when we got to the end, it seemed like we were there a little too fast. To me, it seemed like, oh, wow, that was an abrupt ending. Mm-hmm. Because you find out about, I think, what would really be the second act, when he basically decides, at some point, he's deciding to put his child above his job, but you don't find out a lot about that until they've already made the decision about it. But there's a point where he makes that choice, and we don't see it.
Well, maybe it's.
But we hear about it in the trial.
Oh, I wonder if it's his decision to not stay and talk to his boss at that party.
Oh, the party, right.
You know,
That
the
would
boss
be
is like, talk to me, and he's like, no, I gotta go.
Yeah,
and it's almost like a little deliberation.
Yeah. That's a good indicator of it. Yeah, and that decision is like, okay, priorities have shifted.
Right.
Or at least deliberation. At least there's that deliberation of on the part of the employer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. Story limit, time lock, or option lock. And what are the options since it's not a time lock?
What to do with Billy?
Well, it's Kramer versus Kramer.
Way. No, I know, but
When are
like,
they going to stop fighting?
Pardon?
It's like, when are they going to stop fighting?
Well, so what are the? I mean, it's a custody battle, really, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that doesn't show up until the very end, the last. I guess technically half, although it's about the last third of the movie. But it's sort of a how can we make this work? How can the single dad make this?
Well, it's almost like, what do you have to sacrifice? You know, that's because he's willing to sacrifice the job. He's not willing to sacrifice giving the kid up.
yeah, like the
Oh,
first
that's
option
right.
is to send him away to relatives. And he's like, no, I'm not doing that.
And the final option is to appeal. Or have the kid go on this time.
Right. Okay.
Right, and then
So,
right, and then the climax basically turns out that he has in fact defeated the antagonist. Sort of a surprise, but it's a surprise to him, only because, and to us, because we're not privy to what decisions had been made. Okay. Story outcome: success or failure. Easy one.
Success.
Yeah.
Because
he gets to keep his kid,
Because
The
the
kid's
father
home.
and son stay together.
and the kid is in his home.
Yeah.
Yeah, with clouds.
Okay. And good or bad?
Good.
With clouds. Good because, how do we know?
Because they hug when they're making French
Oh.
toast.
No, it's the
The mom.
No, mom and dad.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's right.
And he lets her go, and he's completely okay and feels safe, and she feels good, and it's all
He smiles.
happy, all smiles. Yeah.
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 But I mean, and this is where you see the larger story judgment as opposed to it just being a main character. You can see even though she lost, it's still good.
Mhm.
You know, it's a good thing. So I think it's a lot closer to when we were defining what judgment meant. Of course, it's also a lot closer to the films that we were aware of when we were creating Dramatica. So, well, you know,
Mhm.
so that concept was something that we drew from, not this movie necessarily, but certainly our awareness of the film. All right. So now what we want to do is we want to identify the four through lines. We know that Ted's going to be in either a situation or activity as a doer. Where do we think the overall story is?
So what?
There's some fixed attitude going on in it, which is men don't take care of their kids and women do. That's just part of it.
As an overall story?
I'm
See,
I'm
part of
looking-
the
I'm
problem,
fishing.
I mean, as I was watching, you know, I was thinking, oh, is this situation, is this psychology? But it also occurred to me that I wasn't sure that there's not a great separation between the OS and the, you know, relationship through line. There's you know, that's why it was hard for me to say, okay, well, is that activity part of the OS or is that activity part of the relationship? You know, and Well,
to that
and,
end, like all the real activities, I think, are with the son. The running to the hospital, the spilling the juice on the pictures, the
bicycle,
the bicycle.
True, and that's why because when assume I know this is a broad generalization, but assuming that the problem of the story of the OS is created by the antagonist, and the antagonist here is Joanna, and she definitely has a certain psychology that's creating the problem here, and so that's why I might I'm not married to it, but that's why I'm tending in that direction.
I was thinking that it was the overall story was an activity because they're both trying to obtain control over the son.
And let's do this. A quick question. Let's answer this. Let's consider this question rather than answer it.
Right.
But if there's a preponderance one way or the other, it'll help indicate the direction. So main character growth, stop or start. Since he's a change character, does it seem more like Ted has a chip on his shoulder, or that he needs to grow into the position that he needs to go? So he tries to step back or step up?
I think he's going to step up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it feels like. Too.
yeah. You could argue either, but in terms of what you see in the movie and where the emotional, power is that he needs to step up to be the good father. Yes, he has his flaws that he needs to stop, but that's not I don't think that's where the emphasis of the story is. He needs to stop being obsessed with his career. It's more about being a good father.
I thought he already had like a chip on his shoulder, like he needed to stop seeing relationships the way that he was seeing them in order to step into taking care of his son.
Well, I mean, think of it. For me, it seems more like a stop, only because if you think it, for him, the world is a wonderful place. When the very first frame of the movie, the world is wonderful, and then his wife dumps him. And how does he react to that? It doesn't seem like he's needs to step up to the plate for that.
He doesn't stop being.
He seems to be the one who's like kind of bitter about that. And ultimately, the very end, when we see him changed, he's completely let that go. I mean, he is go talk to your son. He's sort of made peace with his ex. And he was able, which is brought him a lot closer to his son, and changed the relationship. But I don't think the stop and start was in relationship to his son. I don't think that was ever really an issue. I think it's really, seems to me, at least to me, had much more to do with his ex-wife, and his place, and he was, because he sees himself like his friend as a married man, but he's not. I mean, he sees it. That's how he thinks of himself. He still thinks of himself that he's bitter that's been spoiled.
So it's his whole. So it's like when he in the beginning he's always complaining about you're complaining that I was away doing my job and bringing home the bacon, and that's the chip on his shoulder.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I'm doing what, and that's kind of what she certainly is blaming him for that.
Mm-hmm.
She tells him, I was invisible to you. I was cast in this role, and I couldn't, and it was making me crazy. I had to get out of it. And then he's like, well, crap, now I'm stuck with my son, and and it's all these conflicts, and I love my son, so it's not an issue of do I need to keep going with him. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out. I don't know that that's. Well, no, I don't.
No,
I know
that's right.
It's a good argument.
It's an argument, right? It is an argument, but I don't. That's why I don't want to select that. But it seemed to me that in this case, he seemed to be a lot more of his own problem than having to reach out to find the solution. he wasn't holding back from giving his child love or giving, helping his friend or whatever. He never seemed to be holding back. He always seems to be charging right into right into it. And if anything, he needed to sort of be able to step back. And that's where he did that at the moment when he said, okay, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to have the second trial. It's going to involve my son. He finally is stepping back. And remember, the growth is not the change. That's what allows the change.
Oh, I mean, yeah, okay.
You say so that's the thing that's where your arc is.
You guys are arguing the end part.
What?
Their arguments were about the change.
Right.
Not-
And he's
not
a
about
change
the-
character.
You know what I was actually arguing? It was his experience. He gets better. Literally,
Yeah.
I was arguing he gets better at cooking French toast.
Right.
Which is, like, now that I'm looking at it, it's such a dumb argument.
But no, but that's
No,
a
but that's
metaphor.
what- no,
It's a metaphor.
No, but this is not the benchmark.
No, I think that's closer to the benchmark and closer to the success failure. Is he
Right.
going to be a successful dad? Yes.
Right.
And not only is he going to be a dad, but it doesn't matter whether he has full possession of him or not. He's actually an engaged parent.
Mhm.
And he was a completely disengaged parent at the beginning of the story.
Right.
Right? So that's why it's a success. Because look who's the disengaged parent is mom.
Right.
And she's been disengaged way before the movie starts, but she physically disengages and emotionally completely absents herself right at the very first scene, which is why that's kind of his issue, is that I'm a parent here. I really don't know how to parent because I've been bringing home the bacon. So I've been a breadwinner, but not a parent. Okay, so back to the domains. I don't know. I mean, if it's a steadfast right, I'm not sure which of the orientations it would be. I can see an argument for, as far as Billy goes, I could sort of see him in either way, either as an influence character in psychology or as a relationship in psychology. How could I, or the relationship see the relation?
But I would like it if he was in psychology as the influence.
I'm just saying, because you see him doing a lot of, don't you do that, but it always seems to be in the relationship. He's playing the father who, his dad is like saying, setting limits and not enforcing them. Setting a limit, not enforcing them. Setting a limit, not enforcing it. Don't you dare, you got to eat that before you get up. Don't you take that out of that refrigerator. Don't you open that up. Don't put that in your mouth.
Right.
And he's just sitting there and he's daring him, each stage. Now, but that could be an expression of Billy, or that could be the relationship. That's what I'm saying. In that particular example, because they're engaged so heavily, I'm not sure which one that is. It certainly is partially the relationship, but that is manipulation. I mean, you see those. Oh, and even when they're making the first breakfast. So this is the way, the real places you go, it's always broken in half, and the French toast is always in little pieces, and I don't like it in little pieces. So like that, trying to manipulate him to eat and behave unsuccessfully.
Mm-hmm.
But you can easily see. I can see that in a number of different ways. So that's why I'm not. Does anybody have a feeling for where they see it? Which one of the domains, or any of the 4 through lines that they prefer?
It's tough because it's
It's hard to separate them out.
Yeah. Remember when this came out? This
I know,
is 79, and
it's
it's a very. It could be seen as a very familiar pattern.
Well, I'm inclined to put Ted under situation. I mean, we know he's going to be under situation or activity, and looking at the concerns underneath, past, present, future, progress, how things are going, really seems to be a personal, I think are more personal to him than understanding, learning, doing, and obtaining. Understanding, learning, doing, obtaining, I could see going to the OS, you know, it applies to the or the agency, it applies to the custody battle, and it could apply to the, I mean, learning and understanding especially could apply to the relationship. So which way that flips, I don't know, but I feel that Ted is more strongly under situation. He's a single father, suddenly single, right? And that would put Billy under fixed attitude. You have impulsive responses, innermost desires, contemplations, and you know, memories of mom, I guess. You know, but
I guess if you got the photo out.
Yeah. So at least that.
Give an alternative.
I know it sounds good.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah. The other two I could flip either way, honestly, but I think that's the
Right. That's why I said, well, if you just look at the relationship and the influence character, it's kind of like.
Mm-hmm.
But
I felt very strongly that there were main character moments when it's like, you know, how things are changing, how things are going. They are going really badly, and I think that was a very strong signpost at a particular part. You see him, you know, dealing with the past when he's putting away, you know, all the pictures and all, you know, dealing with the frame, you know, pictures in the frames, and certainly the future. You know, he starts off with such a bright future.
well, also you have past. I mean, alternatively, you have past in the trial.
Right.
And then
Really,
his
you
friend,
have all the past.
right? His
Huh?
friend that was dealing with, she had the divorce too.
Mhm.
I don't know where she fits into activities so much.
It's looking at the trial. That's where they were doing a lot of understanding too. It's what he seemed to understand.
Right.
Trying to create an understanding and sort out misunderstandings. But so much of this personal through line, I think, is in the present.
But that's
too.
why, the overall story would be.
But, especially work attempt to attract or repel. I don't know if that's the concern, but you know, a big bulk of this story is just being a dad in the present moment, just dealing with, you know, his situation, his fatherhood. Sitting in the park, being a mom, you know, being a mom at the play, and being a mom at the park, being a mom at home. You know, it's just being in the reading to him, being in the present moment is a big concern.
Are we?
So, anyway.
We seem to be happy-ish.
Yeah.
So we have our main character, suddenly single dad. We have an influence character, bratty child. No, but, overall story and activity and the relationship and psychology. I mean, because he's constantly trying to manipulate the kid. The kid is constantly trying to manipulate them. I mean, they are.
But again, looking at the concerns, you know, conceiving an idea, you know, how are we going to wrap our heads around this, you know, this relationship?
Well, I mean, look at, or even that's him talking to his son. I don't know if you can actually understand, you know, you can get the idea of what this is, but I mean, here it is, and hopefully you'll get it.
He does that several times in different ways, you know, including at the end where it's like, okay, well, you know, so we turn to the judge, who's a very wise and experienced man, to, you know, and trying to get, you know, help him get the idea of what's going on. Certainly playing, you know, the role playing, certainly changing one's nature. You definitely see that change arc in the relationship.
The change of the relationship.
Yeah.
The father-son relationship.
And developing a plan, you know, trying to figure out
how to make it work.
Yeah, how to make it work. Yeah. So yeah,
Cool.
All right. Now we need to go to the concerns. So we have past understanding, developing a plan, memories as one set, how things are changing, doing, playing a role, impulsive responses, future, obtaining, changing one's nature, innermost desires, or present, gathering information, learning, conceiving an idea, and contemplation as the fourth option for the concerns, the group of the four concerns. Any ones to rule in or rule out?
I really like obtaining for the overall story concern. Still, really trying to.
I mean, it is the obvious one.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is the obvious one with not only the trying to get possession of the child, Kramer versus Kramer, but you have gaining or losing the account, gaining or losing a job, gaining or losing a position, gaining or losing a spouse. I mean, even the conversation with the friend is about losing the spouse and dealing with that. I mean, so thematically, she's dealing with loss as well, and the conversation about, well, getting him back. You know, do you want him back? So I mean, there's just so much in the overall story that falls into that consistently. And it's not like, it doesn't have the feel of a benchmark where you're seeing sort of the same way of it's being evaluated. They just seem to be coming from sort of both gain and loss in all sorts of different contexts.
Yeah. And if anything, the benchmark seems like doing when you're doing the activity of the bench toast or those kinds of things, which I believe the universe still fits with that side, right?
Linear?
Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, the pattern to get to the benchmark has it's very complicated.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very complicated.
Well, it can be either one if it's kitty corner. I just remember.
You mean in terms of the mental sex?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, the diagonal is kind of the most common benchmark, but it depends on resolve.
But anyway,
mental sex.
That would put him being concerned with the future, which is pretty consistent with him in terms of his job and being going to become a director or vice whatever future job, and for him a future with this with his family, as a dad.
How is he concerned? What's his future?
What is that concern about?
Yeah.
He seems to be very. Go ahead.
Well, the family argument that I would have is not about Billy. It's actually about Margaret. He's always asking, well, if he came back, would you take him in?
Oh, what his concern in the future? Checking what other people
are going to do in the future.
What is his problem? Isn't his problem that he thought everything was great and that everything has changed around him?
Here's the thing: his future at his job is suddenly thrown into big uncertainty, and so in terms of his personal focus, he certainly starts out on a note of future. In fact, I would say his signpost order would be future to present to progress to past. But it's certainly the future of
because
being with the son.
I could see obtaining as being like the last signpost, like people are fighting over who it is.
Oh, in the overall story.
Right.
But isn't the problem that actually they're taking care of him and taking care of the accounts, and how are you going to do all this stuff and actually take care of your child at the same time? I mean, that's why, like, I know it's called Kramer versus Kramer, but it felt like it was like, okay, when is that part going to start? Seemed like much later on, and I felt like the problems that everybody had, like especially between the mom and the husband, like she didn't think she was good enough to take care of him, and that's why she went away. And then the solution, or when she finally makes this switch, it's like she finally sees, okay, it was right for her to go. Like, it's right for him to take over because he's better at doing this than I am. I just didn't feel like the whole story was constantly in each act about seizing Billy, or, having him be the one.
No. I mean,
I didn't think the source of conflict was in the actual obtaining of it until maybe like the very end.
right. Well, we haven't identified the goal. We're talking about the concern, and so you're going to see, and there's all sorts of different kinds of concerns with with obtaining all throughout the story.
I guess I'm arguing for doing is the concern. That's what and goal, I guess.
Okay, so I then we'll make that argument. That's I'm sorry. I'm not sure that.
I think you go right there. Something.
Oh, who's going to take care of Billy? Like, I'm the best one to do this job.
That's an obtaining argument. Use it to do a doing argument. Well, you're saying who is going to take care of. That's kind of like finding the right person for.
I know it's hard because I don't know if I'm just trying to make it something more interesting than.
You want the Star Wars one.
I don't want Star Wars. That's not.
You want me to really understand? We'll put it under learning, present, conceived, but I don't think the goal is learning. I think it is either doing or obtaining.
Well,
but
It seemed. I mean, the beginning of the movie, I sort of felt like you, Jim, which is like the Kramer versus Kramer part took so long to come. It looked like it was going to be an experience movie. It was a gathering information movie. Like,
well, it focuses so much on the relationship and the main character.
Right.
And I mean, the overall story, it doesn't disappear, but it
really.
Right. It's much lighter in the first half than it is the second half. The second half, it sort of takes over.
And their relationship, I think, is definitely one of a changing nature.
Commitment, responsibility, rationalization, obligation.
Those are the issues.
I like ability and desire, but commitment, and all that group of four is just really rings
between the two of them.
Yeah,
I can see it on his side, but I don't know if the kid has that much.
Well,
obligation, commitment.
Well, I know the issue comes up a lot. It's like you said you were, going to wash your hair twice a week.
Disagreement.
All
right, I know.
Don't eat the ice cream.
Yeah. We agreed on, so you have a,
That's also very linear. That's
an obligation. Maybe it's probably not going to be a rationalization. That seems to be the weakest of the four. But in terms of what was,
I mean, don't know exactly where the theme is.
Right.
Where the theme will pop up.
But
rationalization is very much that first French toast scene. Like,
we're
gonna do this because it's fun. It's fun, right? It's fun.
There you go. Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm. So I do think that's stronger than.
Well, which goes back to your question. So about the main character of Future. Why this single dad?
Yeah.
Well, if he's concerned with the future, is he going to be able to make it as a single dad? I mean, he is pissed off that he's now that basically his entire life has just been disrupted. Initially, he's pissed off. And he's trying to juggle, but it's like, where's this gonna end up? And he wants it to end up. I mean, he has a goal. He wants to end up with his son, and it's not as something that's forefront in his mind because it doesn't look like it's being challenged in the first two acts.
Right.
The first act. And then halfway through the second until he sees his wife.
Right. Okay. I get that.
And then it becomes for him very, very much an issue until he's able to let it go.
But think about this. I know the Kramer versus Kramer, the custody battle doesn't come up,
Oh,
you know,
that's interesting.
explicitly until halfway through. But in the meantime, we're dealing very strongly with issues of obtaining or losing an account at work. Right?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I guess that's probably better.
Yeah, because basically once that one goes away, then the other one comes in to pick up.
His boss does suggest sending shipping the kid off to the grandparents and stuff too. So if the goal was to keep the son,
Right, he does not want
there's
to
not. Yeah.
lose it, right, from the very beginning.
But you said something about. I just lost it. Until he's able to let that future go.
Right, because remember, he's so concerned about it, but he's a change character, so
Right.
he doesn't get what he wants until he's able to let it go. You know, when it's sort of like, okay, I want him, but he's thinking about the future. You know, it's sort of like it's almost like being binary. And it's like, no, I don't have to have it the way I've been thinking about it, but I can have my son. You know, even if it's part-time, I'd much rather have my son the way my son, you know, thinking about my son first, because he's really, I mean, that's where you get the self-interest morality thing part of it. But because he's so personally self-interested at the beginning of the story. I mean, self-absorbed, completely unaware of his wife. I mean, and it's not that he's disinterested. He just doesn't pay it. He thinks the world is just, you know, a certain way, and it's not. And she just tried to talk to him, and it doesn't happen. So he suddenly finds himself having to go from being, you know, in a world where he is only concerned about himself to a world where that's not acceptable.
Well, I like that litmus test because then it's not like he lets go of progress, because that is where he still is. Like things are still improving or changing. Or that's not where the problem is.
Right.
Okay, so that solves it for me.
So what,
okay.
What's the
No, I just thought that was really cool. I never thought of it that way, where it's like, stop being concerned with the future.
Right. Well, yeah, you don't have to. You can get what you want by. It's almost like you get it. If you love it, let it go, and it'll come back to you, type thing. But if the more you hold on to it, so he struggles, and he finally is able to say, "Okay, I will accept whatever it is."
Right, but he's not stopping being concerned with how things are changing.
No, he's concerned with it, but he's not going to have to
That's
be
awesome.
grabby for it.
Can you express the litmus test?
Oh,
I mean, that's a benchmark.
well, I guess just in my head, like, because between progress and future, I don't see future, but that could be my own personal issue because I don't, you know, the usual story form sort of thing.
Right.
But when you said, when he lets go of the future, that's when he's actually able to change. Then that made perfect sense to me. Kind of like where it's like, when you're trying to determine where a problem is in the through line, it's like, well, if they stopped doing this thing in the activity, would that solve the problem? That always makes it clear to me. If they get unstuck.
I see.
So knowing.
Yeah, especially in a situation, where is he stuck?
Yeah.
And
So,
if he's stuck with a certain concept of a certain future, or I'm on this path for this future, and I just like, okay, meaning let it loose and not be so stuck, that would allow him to change.
and if my other one was correct, the concern of progress, then that would hold true. Like, he stopped being concerned with how things are changing, then he would be able to change. But he's obviously, things are changing, so that's not actually where his problem is. His
Right, but
problem
that's
is-
probably the benchmark, which would be consistent with the doing benchmark.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know if that's
So
the case, but that would be consistent with
Which
it.
just was a cool way of thinking about it. Okay,
All
I'm
right.
on board with the boring story form.
Yeah.
Pursuit of
It is.
Sometimes-
It is yeah. I mean, it's of that period too. So
Sure.
But not only that, but you know, you see a lot of those other points hit. I mean, it's you know, even if it's based in the obtaining future, etc., you still see a lot of, you know, work attract, you know, repel attempt. You see a lot of prerequisites, preconditions. You know, you see the story hit a lot of the points all around the chart. So,
It's a well-rounded movie.
Yeah, it is.
I like a lot of, like, you know, Witness was a lot like that. A lot of the other, you know, ones from that period that have held up as great, you know, screenplays.
Before we have a benchmark understanding.
Yeah. That's just filling in what we have so far.
Yes.
I mean, overall story.
Yes.
Understanding past memories, developing a plan.
Well, we may end up changing something.
Or redefining what the benchmark is.
Or not. Yeah. Okay, so let me make those choices. We have change or linear. Oops. That's a decision. Option lock. Success. Good. And we have activity. And then we're going to go. As our main character is Ted. Billy. Billy.
You're laughing for me.
All right, and let's go to the theme browser. All right. So if we make the overall story, let's just do this for a second. If we make the so it's not even an option. Wow. Interesting. Okay, so
It already has the signpost.
What if you undid the mental sex?
I mean, he is not a holistic marker.
All right, I was just gonna say, just
It is, right? Okay.
What'd you say?
It already has the whole signpost order for overall story.
Really?
And there's only one option left for main character.
Doing, obtaining, gathering
16.
information, understanding.
Oh, you did the concern. I haven't done the concern yet.
I'm ready to do the
what-
catalyst too.
That's interesting. And the influence character.
That seems wrong for the influence character.
really?
What?
He ends with impulsive responses.
Yeah, that feels much more of a middle thing.
No, to put memories at 2.
Thinking about it. If anything, I put contemplation in.
You haven't picked concern yet, right?
No,
Okay.
I have not.
I just wanted to make sure I matched what you had.
Right. Okay. Well, so all right. Well, let's continue on and see where this heads, and we may have to back out. Who knows? All right. So we were looking at the overall story concern of obtaining, right?
Yeah.
Which leaves us with approach, attitude, self-interest, and morality. We go down to the element level. I'll send that in. So we've got
Okay.
yes.
Well, uncontrolled and control is really strong, and I feel like that's from approach, attitude, self-interest, morality. I really think the central question is what's in Billy's self-interest, what's in Ted's self-interest, what's in the wife's self-interest, versus what's best overall. The guy says, the boss says, I think you should send him off to stay with relatives.
Right.
I think that pair at least is the stronger one. But control and uncontrol really kind of sings out.
Oh, so
Well, because he's completely out of control. And Joanne sends her walking out. He can't. The backstory is he controlled her too much, and so she walked out and threw everything into a state of chaos. And the whole kitchen scene, is chaotic. And over time, they figure out how to sort of,
but chaos is different than uncontrolled.
no,
No, it is. That's a completely different thing. Uncontrolled is free, but it's not chaotic.
Mhm.
Um, let's see.
There's a lot of like temptation to work versus do what he thinks he should do for his kid.
Or this is, remember in the overall story, so
Where's control in there?
It's under self-interest.
it's under self-interest in obtaining.
Oh,
There.
oh, I thought we were in the,
We're in the main character.
no, we're in this point.
So with the main character,
And then
let's look at the main character.
delay.
So under the future,
oh, I see, okay, future.
we have openness, delay, choice, and preconception.
Okay, so I just made a choice, argument for choice then, because of the same two were there.
Right, by making that, right.
Thanks for showing me that.
And my question about, I see logic and feeling, that's an easy one. I'm not sure, in the other one it had faith and disbelief as the part of it. Or logic and feeling, see, to me, the approach is the one that reads a little stronger than self-interest. So I see this. I don't see an argument for self-interest or a concern of self-interest. We see a lot of it, but they're not making. It's kind of like I see in the overall story approach as: are you bringing your work to the home to the office? Is it interfering? That it's an approach that screws things up. It's not him being late. That's not an issue of self-interest or morality. It's really is doing certain things is messing up other things.
Is it so? When he goes to take care of his kid with a fever, that's what's best.
That's an approach problem.
But it's not a morality problem because it doesn't consider the company. Is that the idea?
Well, it's right. It's not. I mean, they're trying to. In fact, what was interesting was he was trying to make a point that this guy doesn't believe. He's irresponsible as in his job. While he was making the argument without saying it that he's a terribly responsible parent.
Right.
And I was surprised that they didn't bring that up, but they're trying to maximum conflict, and you want leave those inequities in the audience so that it's like, wait, don't you see? That was the whole point.
Right.
And that's why he was getting all upset if he wasn't articulating it properly, but that was effectively the concern. But it's the issue is that his approach is not going to be, her approach is better than his approach for parenting. It's a better approach to give the mother the child than it is the father the child. And
okay, all right. You make a very strong argument for reconsider. I think it's a problem because it's certainly I've reconsidered. I mean, it all rests with Joanne. I've reconsidered.
Is the problem or the solution?
No, I think the problem.
Okay.
Huh? Are you talking about the
Problem
problem at the
because-
beginning, or a problem at how it's addressed at the beginning, or how it's addressed at the end?
I think he meant problem because then he goes to being more considerate at the end.
Remember, think about it. It's also her too.
Mhm.
Remember, this is the overall story. We're looking
So
at the
she
overall story.
reconsiders. Is that your point?
Well, that's a good question because it's like, okay, obviously at the end, she reconsiders, and that brings it
That's
together successful. So then you'd have to,
I thought he was being inconsiderate. That was the whole problem. It was a lack of consideration that sent her away.
And then at the end, she reconsiders the decision of the judges, which,
Right.
and I think too,
And he also, and frankly, he's kind of being a little more. He's going to change on that same thing, and he's going to reconsider his, effort to try to retain, to be a single dad. That a father that he's not going to share.
Mhm.
He's got his son, and he reconsiders and says, okay, I'm going to let the dice fall where they are, and he says, okay, this is the way it's going to be, and you're going to see two weeks and one night, two weekends each month and one night of each week.
Mhm.
And so, he reconsiders basically this whole lifestyle and everything else, but he goes from being inconsiderate to considerate to then reconsidering altogether.
Mhm.
And that reconsider is at them that's at them where he's sort of changed. That's the point where he's starting to change.
Well, it's funny too, thinking about the things that they didn't talk about in the trial, the way that he's arguing I'm a great dad, but they don't reconsider that.
Right.
They just consider the question. Did you miss the meeting? Yes.
Yes, exactly.
And then, because we talked about this before too, why doesn't the lawyer call him back to the stand and go, why did you miss the meeting? They just don't do it.
Yeah,
You
right,
know?
because they want to leave the inequity in the audience because it makes
He didn't look like he was very expensive.
It was 6 months salary, man.
Yeah, I know. That's half a year's salary.
Oh,
$15,000, and he's making $30,000 a year.
Yeah. 28 too.
Well, but that was only for part of the year
Yeah.
because he was also making 31 the other part.
Sure, really. I was like, why is that such a big deal? It's only $2,000. Give the
Yeah, I
guy a
think-
break.
There's been a bit of inflation in the last few years.
Story forms are a lot more interesting too. Oh, sorry. That was
So you're happier.
Nice.
No, I made a joke because
Oh.
No.
the inflation of story forms.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there are. Well, because there's so many more stories. There are a lot more films being
Was
made.
the verdict
now.
about consider and reconsider too?
I don't recall.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember.
Is that the
those
same
things.
era?
But you also see the issue of logic and feeling. I mean,
There'd be if we consider as the problem, then logic would be the symptom. Feeling is the
right. It's this is my job. I bring home the bacon, and you raise the kid, and that's sort of it's this logical argument he makes, and he makes these logical arguments too. And we've got the friend who's got the logic of, well, maybe he'll come back. It's like the feeling of it, and then he asks, well, what do you think? It's like, I don't know. I don't know if I really want him to come back. So it's to see the logic isn't going to solve it, and try going with the gut. And you see the kid does it every time. The kid doesn't, or the kid challenges the logic. He pushes the logic. It's like, no, of course, that's when you get mad, and okay, so now there's boundaries.
the kid will have a symptom response of logic and feeling as well. Let's see.
And again, that's
And then, okay. Then he has a problem.
the logic thing is sort of the why. He doesn't say it, but it's one of the why as a problem or as a symptom.
Okay.
And until there's an emotional response.
Okay. I love that. That's
And
awesome.
that's like, oh, okay. Okay. But I mean, you see him, he doesn't push it too often, but it does because it's nice. So if we say that the approach is the issue, and we're saying consider as a problem, what we end up with is a story form. Let me save this first. Kramer.
The thing that's nice about this for me is that before we even talked about the issue, the catalyst of I was thinking the catalyst of self-interest was really good. And,
Yeah, there it works.
And it's confirmed by this. So, which I think is really good.
Okay, so now we have
Oh wow.
what?
His unique ability of delay. Be the main character.
Well, it comes up literally at one point. The critical flaw of dream.
How so?
Well, I mean, the lawyer tells him,
Oh, can you push it back?
Yeah.
But he is unable to. But
Yeah, that makes it a distinct. Isn't that a demonstration of he doesn't have that ability? Delay it. We can't do that.
You're dreaming. That's the critical flaw.
Can we go over how you picked the issue?
yes, at which we can undo it easily. Go back to.
I think the hardest part for me is at the issue level is just trying to figure out which one's picking why.
Well, okay, there are two ways to do it. One, you skip it and you pick the elements.
Right.
No, and that's a completely, at any point, everybody has blind spots. Like there's certain parts of the chart you just don't want to go to.
Like
You
this
shy away.
box.
You shy away from.
Like yours is start and start, right?
Huh?
Like yours.
Yes,
stop
like
and start.
mine is
Yeah.
stop and start. I tend not to do it. I also tend not to do it for a logistical reason because it locks in the you make
Oh,
one
okay.
choice of a domain and it sets all four.
Okay.
That's part of the reason. Personally, I also I see that a little too grayish as the difference. Some stories it's really clear. This one, he seemed to be absolutely his own worst enemy. But most of the time, for me, it's not as obvious. Over the years, I've gotten better at it. But for here, I think if you have a story about self, I look at the ones that I don't think are part of it, and I look at the ones I think might be part of it, and I narrow it down from there. So the first thing I do is I figure out which pair. I did not see it as morality self-interest because they're both argued pretty much, they're shown equally. I mean, and there's not a focus on one or the other. You know, you see he's very self-centered, but he's also doing an awful lot for his child would be, at his own expense, at work or at work's expense. And it's not made a big deal of. I mean, the effects of it are. And so that's why it seemed to me that those are the measuring sticks rather than the actual thing that's being measured. So if you look at a quad, of any quad, but it's most emphasized at the thematic level, a one dynamic pair is going to be the thematic point and the counterpoint. So that's going to be the argument. But the other two are going to be the yardstick by which you evaluate them. So if you said, how can you tell if something is self-interested or in morality? How do you evaluate that? Well, you look at the approach and you look at the attitude and you say, okay, based on that, is it more in self-interest or is it more in morality? And so, or vice versa. If for any one pair, the other one becomes the yardstick. Another way of looking at it is in any quad, one pair will be binary, the other will be analog. And the point and counterpoint is the binary, and the codynamic pair is the analog. So it seems more like a grayscale.
Okay.
And so every quad has, both particle and wave. It's got all those different ways of looking at things built into the structure of a quad. And so when you decide to sort of focus on something, you can then look at it and measure it in terms of those others. And that's why, for me, attitude never seemed to be an issue. There's never a question of people's attitudes. I mean, there's commentary on the attitude, mostly visual, or him looking at people like at the party and stuff like that.
or people looking at him. But there, sometimes he seemed to have an attitude, but it was really never about attitude, but it certainly did seem to be about approach. Her leaving the child and just sort of him coming in and kind of ignoring her while she's trying to tell him something really important, and then just and sort of badgering her on as she's leaving him, not listening to him. That's an approach problem. The boss, well, okay, such and such just had a heart attack. Okay, well, now you're getting the, it's like, okay, but if you're going to start, having things encroach, and he warned him right from the beginning, here's what you ought to do, get him out of the picture. But, it's interfering. And that's why when the phone call comes in from his son, he says, you've got a call on such and such. Well, just, no, answer the phone. Because he knows who it is. He wants to make sure that Ted knows he knows that his son's calling him at work. That's an approach issue. It created tension. So those are the kinds of things that when I pick a point, I've got to find it in the overall story. I've got to see it with a lot of other characters other than the main character or the influence character. That's really important.
So then how do you tell which one? Because the indirect one is the issue, and the direct one is the other one, right?
Right. Usually you'll see one way more than the other. You'll see the issue much more in focus than the counterpoint, particularly because of what's beneath it. Because the problem solutions, symptom response are directly related to the issue.
So but if we see the issue, if the issue's indirect, then why do we see it the most?
If it's
Maybe
indirect, I'm not sure what you mean.
Isn't it exploring? Doesn't the issue mean that you're exploring approach in this case indirectly?
No, the issue. No, I'm not sure how you mean by indirectly. No, it's because you're specifically exploring approach.
Okay.
And I'd say indirectly, meaning I'm not choosing it, attitude, because I didn't choose attitude, because it's a pair. So if I pick one, I get the other one.
Right.
But I'm picking the one because I see it much more as an issue than the other, which is just the flip side of the coin. And remember, at the heart of all of this, the reason we call it a problem or a symptom or an issue or a concern is because there's an equity in there. We're looking for conflict. And so an issue, if we see conflict in that specifically, then that's an indicator.
You do see attitude, expressed quite. Dustin Hoffman sitting on the couch saying, "You know what? I'm in this 25 hours, 8 days a week. You've got I've got the excellent attitude. He's arguing his attitude as a counterpoint to, well, your approach seems to be wobbly. Right. So, but I've got a great attitude. So you do see it.
Right. It's there, but it's always seems to be
expressed
in response to.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's a response to that.
To conflicts in the approach. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I was sort of approaching that. That's
yeah, but such an attitude.
Yeah, that's me. Major attitude.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, major attitude.
So
general maintenance.
How about, so we've got our overall story. We picked activity, concern of obtaining, an issue of approach, and a problem of consider, as in being inconsiderate, and a solution of reconsider, which we see that the whole Kramer versus Kramer conflict, the single dad, is the single dad going to make it, is resolved by the ex-wife reconsidering and letting him keep the kid. The symptom of logic, he certainly with her, he was trying to make logical arguments, and it's just, her response to that is just, she just falls apart. This is the very beginning He's constantly trying to save, well, not just he, but there are logical arguments for what they're doing, such as when she comes back and is suing him for custody, and his response is, smash. He just like, I'll resolve this conflict by smashing, swimming away and smashing the wine against the wall. And he made his point. The boss who's trying to logically let him go. Again, the same thing. It fuels the emotion and the burn that gets him motivated to, go out and get a job immediately. Because if they had actually done it in a more, emotionally sensitive way, or it probably wouldn't have motivated him to follow up that way. Yes.
Is also the lawyers attacking them on the stand sort of an example of, we're going to logically prove why you can't be a good parent, and then they cry a logic feeling pair, or is that too?
Well, yeah, the logic is the argument, and then you see him yelling at her, and it gets what they want. We get sort of the right information out.
Okay.
It's not necessarily what she's not happy with it, but it sort of solves that problem.
Okay.
And you see Ted's emotional response really kind of, if an adequate defense was going to be made for his position, that's when he was emotionally responding to those. Yes, logically, I understand you're trying to corner me into this, but emotionally, I've got to get this out. I'm getting all upset about it because, I want this to be resolved, effectively. Now, the benchmark of understanding. Let's see.
Well, Dustin Hoffman on the stand. Ted on the stand certainly speaks to challenging the understandings.
True.
Of what a good parent is.
I think you also get a bit of this is probably where his sort of sidekick from downstairs comes in. I think she's able to give us. He's trying to understand, what was going on with his wife. Their marriage? How is that going to resolve? So you get a sense of, is the likelihood that he's going to be a successful single parent, or not? And I think it's sort of, it kind of seems like, the understanding that everything's fair game by the end, that he thought he felt responsible for the son's accident, and then sort of how it's turned against him, and that I think is one of the things that made her reconsider his response to them, because she realized things were being used in a logical way that were problematic, because it wasn't representing the reality. It was winning the custody, and and her emotional, it upset her.
Mm-hmm.
It upset him too, but it upset her as well. And you can see how that is tied to her eventual decision, and her feelings eventually, since she's not a change character, the feelings are the things that really drove her to sort of reconsider as an antagonist.
Yeah, definitely. Changing the understanding.
Inhibitor of responsibility. I think that one's actually really good for the overall story, because the things slow down. I mean, he's got a kid he's got to take care of. So the job is not moving, things aren't moving as fast as they're supposed to, and eventually it loses him his position. You know, all these things he has to do slows down his ability to certainly be a breadwinner, that aspect of it. And his job responsibility to the job slows down sort of the home development stuff as well. You know, it's kind of like he's slave to two different masters as to responsibility. And you hear that argument from, you know, his boss. You know, we have this responsibility to the clients and such. Main character situation. Here's this man who's been moving up and is on the sort of the peak of his, just on the cusp of a really big change in his life, and he gets suddenly saddled with having to take care of his son as a single dad. That's a conflicted situation. And so what's interesting is that he lets go of the career first as the most important, but it's still the single dad. The custody immediately takes place, so that the pressure for being that single dad is not over. So that's kind of, you know, when you have a story, as the story develops, it goes through phases so that the challenges are not the same thing. Usually, you're going to have the goal, and it's going to be consistent all the way. It always has been, but so the challenge seemed to be different. I mean, once the case came up, the Kramer versus Kramer, clearly that was the ultimate. You know, that started when she left, kind of disappeared for a while. It was there, and he was dealing with it from the career side of it, but then, you know, ultimately for him, the future was with his son, not with his career. And that's why when he's able to sort of say, okay, I'm going to let my future go. Not that I won't get it, but I'm sort of changing what I want from it, and that worked out well for him.
That's where openness versus preconception plays in, which you were arguing choice, but I think your argument for choice can also fit for openness. That he's, you know, at least you know, is kind of forced to open his mind to other, you know. Or he has to open his mind to other possibilities as to how to do things and how to handle, you know, his responsibilities. So,
now,
and putting aside preconceptions, which again, the kitchen scene is an example of that.
So let's discuss the symptom of faith and the response of disbelief. Obviously, we're not talking religious. So.
People believing he can do it.
He does kind of have faith in the roles and responsibilities outlined by marriage at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Or that he was like acting in good faith
Yeah.
towards him.
Okay. And how does that extend? Remember, this is a symptom, so this is going to be. We'll start there.
Yeah.
And I mean, you certainly see his response being disbelief.
He cannot believe.
He can't believe that she's leaving him. He can't believe that. I mean, it's just sort of like, what? You know?
Well, and you can't believe that the court's going to give it to the mom just because she's the mom.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's weird.
The faith.
Or that they would fire him for taking care of his kid who had 104 fever, or all these things that
all the institutions, right?
Yeah, all these different things. Like, it's like,
well, I think the issue, part of the conflict for him is is he wants to believe that he can do it all.
Right.
That he
Well,
can
he has
go-
faith. He has faith that he can do it all.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
And
it gets
that
broken down.
constantly is being shoved in his face, and it's like sort of
Yeah, I mean, he asked the boss several times to take it on faith that I can do the job.
Yeah.
right.
You know, and he's wrong.
And it is, and I think what happens, the disbelief in several cases, that it's not so much that he disbelieves, but others disbelieve him. They don't believe
But like-
he's ready for it, can do it.
When he
We're
goes
gonna
to
give
the,
the job to such and such.
Mhm.
well, when he goes to the new, this is actually interesting. Maybe it has to do with unique ability of delay. I'm not gonna. Well, I'm thinking about the scene when he's the second agency and he's insisting on a decision today, because otherwise I'm walking away. Is that playing with faith and disbelief? Is that playing with?
I think that's main. I think it's overall story. I think you're dealing with the logic and feeling. Because the logic is, it's Friday before Christmas. Come back afterward. Well, no, I'm gonna. So he's like, the feeling is, he's using feeling to bulldoze his way forward, and ultimately, the guys who have to choose, they're going to have to choose based on their feeling about
gut
him,
response?
because they don't have enough information about him. But they
Haven't
see
had
what
time-
he's
don't
done
have time
and
to
such,
think
and they
through
know
it.
how much he's been paid, and
But I do kind of see that as he's going to lose his right to be a single dad if he doesn't have a job, which is why he forces no delay.
right.
You have no delay.
Yeah, that's what delay. That's what the delay is. It's
Yeah.
like,
Is that what you're
oh
saying?
Yeah, that's
okay.
what that's
yeah,
why
I'm
it's
sorry. Yes.
where it fits.
Yes.
That's why I'm.
We said again?
That
It
okay.
was unique ability to delay that you're arguing.
In this case, it's I'm not going to delay. In this particular scene,
Oh,
I'm not going to wait until after the first of the year for you to make a decision.
Yes, I
So-
agree with that.
oh, I see.
I refuse to delay,
I see.
and that in that particular scene, that's his very strong unique
Yes.
ability.
And looping back to our earlier conversation, maybe I missed someone say this, but his critical flaw of dream, I can do it all.
Yes,
Okay.
Right?
Exactly.
Is that- yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
and I think that the benchmark of the past is benchmark of the past for him. I keep on using the neighbor because she's the best source of everything, but she's that and the wife.
Well, he's always like reflecting on everything that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I mean, and for benchmark, I mean, he's sort of bouncing it off, and you're getting sort of see how it's, because hers is, what this relationship you had, and then even in the court, your relationship with my wife, and what did you say to her, and
Mhm.
it's like, this is not looking good.
Right.
Now we've got our influence character, fixed attitude.
I think the fixed attitude is he loves his kid, isn't it?
This is the kid, Billy.
I know, but
He unconditional love,
unconditional love for his child.
and the kid has unconditional love for him too.
Yes.
I think that's
That's never questioned, actually.
No.
Which is sort of nice.
right. It's not a jaded kid or
There's sort
It's
of a weird lack of this this cheap antagonism in this movie, which is nice.
right. It's and because it has an innocence to it that's really, I don't want to say precious, but it's very unusual because you don't see that in current films at all.
No.
'Cause, kids are a lot more exposed to a lot more now. And if you portrayed a kid like that, they do exist, but they're not very common. I mean,
Yeah.
at
What
least
would
not
happen-
in a movie world.
No.
What would happen if Ted was a beer, not a doer?
You'd have a completely different movie.
Yeah.
Because you'd have someone who is, you'd have a whole different kind of a problem that you'd be dealing with. You would have to, he'd be very uncomfortable. He would not be someone he'd be holding back, maybe emotionally withdrawn from the kid in order to have the same kind of issues. and needing to step up and deal with his son. You probably have
Actually, what you'd
a
have is
lot more
movie,
acting out from the son.
you'd probably have the movie focused on Meryl Streep instead of Dustin Hoffman. You know, I mean,
Well, no. Not keeping the characters as they are now and changing the story for them. You'd have to change the character. If the main character is a beer, it would be a completely different kind of a story.
that's what
He
I'm
would-
saying.
You could tell from Billy's point of view, he'd be a beer around.
You could, sure, but that's you can if you want to change a lot of parameters, you can do anything you want without keeping everything else the same, but just changing that one thing. That's what I was sort of trying to address. So you would have the feel of it would be completely different because assuming that the overall story is still an activity domain, and you basically flipped the main and influence character domains, then Billy would be he'd be the acting out problem child.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know, physically doing all sorts of things, and that the parent is not like the parent not wanting to actually or having difficulty controlling the kid, not picking him up and bringing him to his bedroom or running back to the hospital. You know, you have a completely different kind of a character. All right. Again, in a concern with innermost desires, I think it's almost sort of a given. It's sort of the love thing, you know, and I'm scared that he's losing his parents.
Isn't part of the challenge for the influence character that like a little bit of sadness and just like doesn't think his dad can do it? That's kind of the challenge that's coming to him.
Yeah.
Like not overtly, but you can't cook breakfast. You don't get the right groceries. You can't tell me what to do.
Mm-hmm. You can't tell me what to do is the attitude.
Yeah, and that kind of because he doesn't really he doesn't seem very happy.
I think that's a benchmark of memories more. I think it's like mom did it this
No,
way.
but I mean like I know, but his influence on him to kind of get him to change the challenge to him is just like
Right, because
you can't
he's always
do it.
He's very frequently very upset.
He's just like this the whole time, like like
Right.
very like cynical,
Very numb.
very numb. Yeah.
Shut down.
And doesn't really, and it's like if he was a happier, joyful kid, that would be easier for
Dad.
to deal
Well,
with.
sure, but we're dealing with conflict, so.
Right. No, but I'm just saying
Yeah,
that's
he's
like the
sullen.
source of the
He's a lot
sullen.
more
Okay, that's
sullen,
is what's like actually challenging whether or not I can do this. Like,
And of course, they have an issue of closure, which is great because, okay, mom's gone. You know,
right.
family's. You know what's going to happen? Am I? You know, are you going to not love me? Yeah.
Well, in terms of the innermost desires, too, doesn't he ask, once does mom still love me? Did mom leave because of me?
Yeah.
I think that's a real concern for him.
Yeah, that's also
Are you
closure.
Right. Are you going to leave? He asks, like.
And then control? Is that
He's
just that he's a
steadfast
really,
character.
You know,
but is that he's just really reserved?
your thing of dish not being able to cook and this is that he's got a unique ability of hope. I wonder if it's like it's clear that his dad is hopeless.
Oh yeah, totally. I totally think that. Yeah. You took that out of my head.
We didn't get to that spot yet.
Yes, completely.
You and I are the same.
But I
Let's eat
also
some
think-
cereal in our underwear together.
Right, but the problem with control, that is him shutting down, him
Right,
him not responding, him
like there's a
his
naked
dad's
woman,
like,
naked woman in the hallway. Like, hey, what's up?
right. I don't think that was an influence character
Oh,
moment.
I know.
I think it's just a
It was very funny.
I think it's just a purely comedic moment.
It's like I'm too young to know what all that is. That is
It's like the only rated R scene in the whole movie, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
It's worth it. And again, he seems to be he seems to be a very passive beer in this, sullen and sort of controlled. You've got him with symptom of logic. How he says, it's like, oh, that logic, that's not working. No, you can tell me that. No, I'm gonna screw with that logic. Yeah, Dad, keep on saying that. No, that's not it. Or in his case, where he thinks the logic, did I cause Mom to leave?
Right.
And feeling as love is the thing that just will resolve that.
Yeah.
And we don't see a whole lot of memory benchmarks. The thing is, you could easily write them into it. I mean, I think they kept a lot of his stuff out of it.
Well, it's hard to have a kid act. I mean, that's a good reason to.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm underestimating him in the directing and stuff. I do think the benchmark of he sleeps under a wall of cards to his mother that he wrote to his mother, and his picture is there. So I think memories is a big part of it, but that's
Right.
also innermost desires. That's
Right.
also
Yeah. See, sort of,
like,
it's everything's very consistent and very. I mean, with his through line. What about the relationship through line? That's the last part that we have in here. Okay, so manipulation or psychology or just dysfunctional behavior. This is the father-son relationship that didn't exist, that is now slowly being developed. And yet, clearly it starts off where you definitely have this son is not really convinced that dad's capable
no.
of it, but it's not his disbelief doesn't show up in here, which is good. Congruence nature, issue of rationalization, a problem of help. Is this with Dad's trying to help? I don't know. We have 3 doses of logic and feeling as symptom and response.
I was wondering about that. Is there a pattern for that? Like with the relationship story?
It has to do with success failure.
Right.
On a success story, the relationship through the line shares the same symptom and response as the OS. In a failure story, it shares the same problem solution.
Well, what about with the influence character?
When you have a steadfast influence character,
it's steadfast and
he
change.
shares the symptom and response.
Oh, okay.
The change character shares the problem solution.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
So, I mean, it's one of the reasons why all these examples are sort of blend into working for all 3.
Yeah.
Signposts are crazy good.
Oh, really? How do we have that? Signposts for the relationship?
Yeah. 1 through 4. Building a plan, like,
This is
how are
what
we
we're
gonna make this
do.
work?
Yeah.
And then playing a role. So father, son, father, who's in charge.
The way we've been talking about the job.
Go ahead
taking
and
over.
move me.
Okay, thanks.
It's right in the middle of something.
Were you
but-
talking?
No, I didn't.
No, I
Obviously, it wasn't that important. So go
No,
ahead.
his lips were moving.
Sorry.
There was no
No, go ahead.
And noises were being uttered, but
You had a great thought, so share it with
No.
everybody.
It's okay. I stole this thought from your head too.
What was the thought? We'll get back
It's
to it.
totally worth it. The way that the job thing ends, and then the trial thing takes over. 3 of these are bumps in the middle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, that was worth it.
boom.
I'll go with that.
Back to you, Jim.
Okay, he's talking about the patterns of the signposts
Oh, yeah.
create either a U pattern or an N pattern or Z pattern, N or Z pattern or a hairpin.
Yeah.
And the
Or
bump
X or
The bump is a
Well, the bump is just
When you go
It's
through the
just-
center,
it's just
it's a slide, and when you cross
Yeah.
you sense the transition from one domain to the
Are
other.
you just saying it was a U pattern? Bump, bump, bump?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
only one's a U. Two of them are
X.
hairpins, but they still have a
Okay.
bump in the middle.
I see.
Right. I mean,
still
and even
can't
the overall story is the X.
It's
You see, it has doing to obtaining, and then the main transition. So you have first half, second half.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have
That's really-
work and then trial.
Working.
you
Right.
okay.
know, so that's why that explains why
Doing obtaining.
it works really well with that field, because it's sort of the first side is all the doing obtaining thing, and then we have the gathering information and understanding.
So which ones are? So the
So if you look at, doing to obtaining is a dynamic pair. So the transition is very gradual. That's like an analog kind of relationship if you follow along like that.
okay,
But then you
that's
go,
an X.
but then
No.
you go to learning.
Yeah.
Or you go to, it's doing to obtaining. So upper right, lower left, and then you cross to the lower right. So it goes across that order there, and you'll sense that. And then it goes to understanding. So it'll be in that, essentially, I feel like it's a first half, second half, as opposed to a 3-act structure. You know? Whereas if you look at the innermost desires, contemplations, you're gonna have a bump there. And then to memory, that's a slide,
So that was a
and
V.
then impulsive responses. That's gonna be the sort of the 3-act structure. The main character, going from the past to the present, is a slide, and then bump to how things have changed in the future. So that's going to again feel like
That's good.
first half, second half. And then the last one, developing a plan, playing a role, conceiving an idea, and changing its nature, which is the relationship, is going to feel like, act, 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 act. It's going to be very segmented.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So some of these things that we were talking about and trying to deal with them because they just feel different. This actually explains what was going on.
Right.
Yeah, they are. So we have one U pattern, one.
One's
2 X patterns and 1 Z pattern,
Okay. Yeah.
or hairpin. I like X better.
Yeah.
If you think of X without taking it up, it's like,
Yeah.
I do. My favorite part of this though is main character signpost 2 of the present and signpost 3 of how things are changing. I might have flipped 1 and 4 if I was selecting it from scratch, but
you were the one who made the argument for the past.
well, true. That wasn't well. Okay, and that was in the first act, but
Yeah, getting rid of all the pictures,
Mm,
getting
all
rid of the burying the marriage.
I guess the it ends on a point of if he smiles because it says, "Phew, my future's okay." He's got a job, he's got his kid, and
Well,
just,
the whole act though is about him looking at the future. I mean, it's okay, we're gonna make it. We're gonna, we'll make our future work. I'll be seeing you, on weekends and once a week during the week, and and sort of like just making the future work for them.
and I think signpost 4 changing one's nature is spot on because again the kitchen scene is a metaphor for the arc of the relationship.
Yes.
Almost desire.
Still haven't figured out the problem of help in the relationship.
Yeah, I have not yet. So the one thing we're talking about is the problem of help in the relationship. A direct assistance to another's. Oh.
Isn't it like over involvement?
Or you're not helping me here. You're not helping me.
I like that. Yeah.
Well, you also have how the helping his son, rescuing his son ends up causing conflict too. But that's kind of the wrong. That's not in the relationship though. It doesn't cause a problem in the relationship.
It's almost like he's part of his approach here is with the kid is that you have to help me be a good parent, and he's sort of like, well, I'm the kid here, right? I should be a kid.
Yeah, child.
Was that
Parentified child.
yeah? But and that approach is what's creating conflict. I need you to help me work this out, and he doesn't see that as his role. That makes sense.
Oh, the kid is helpful though. Like the kid wakes him up in the morning, right? Because the kid always wakes up first. Wakes up the dad. They do breakfast together. It doesn't seem.
Well, yeah,
but those are not moments where there's a conflict.
Right.
I mean,
No, that's my point. Is that
Good night. All right, see you next month.
see ya.
All right. Thank
right?
You're
I'm
saying that
looking at.
motivates the relationship, that
Yeah,
helps it
that's
grow.
that's what
Like
I'm
if it's a
saying.
positive
Oh,
relationship
thank
that's
you.
growing from
That's
something.
Right. In other words, if it's a steadfast relationship, which it is.
Because it gets back to the
Right?
way that the kid
Yeah.
never really there's no antagonism there. There's no cynicism from the kid.
Right. In other words, what moves the relationship forward is that they are trying to help.
Right.
They're trying to make this work. They're trying to assist each other, and you do see an awful lot of that. I mean,
Yeah.
So I think that is in fact correct. I don't think what you don't. It's interesting when you see the conflict in the logic and feeling part.
Right.
The ice cream piece or the
Even that ice cream thing though, it just struck me so much as the problem of control. More like it's the kid just being like, I'm gonna do this. You can't stop me. And I know that it's sometimes hard to tease those apart, but
well, I mean, logic is, it's like we have this agreement,
Right.
Mhm.
And I'm breaking.
right? And
okay. Yeah.
it's like we said that you're going to do this, okay? And then he's just going to keep as a problem. It's like your logic is not working. Your logic, you can use logic on me as much as you want, but then when he blows up, okay, we're fine, we're good. I mean, he screams and then he works it out, and then it's okay.
Right. And then actually the feeling is what
That's
At
what
the end,
resolves
yeah.
it. Yeah,
I
that's
love
where
you.
the
I love you
feeling
too.
is response.
And I think in that scene too is the first time, maybe I'm wrong, where he says sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite.
Right,
Which is what the
back and
mom had
forth.
said
Yeah,
in the beginning. So it's almost like
this transference.
Yeah.
They're starting to become the couple.
Yeah.
So how does the hinder part?
Okay, so what the thing that would resolve the motivation or drive in the relationship, demotivate it, would be if they were trying to make things more difficult. They were, in other words, rather than being helpful and trying to really keep together buddies, etc., but if they're really trying to sort of make it a lot more difficult, they'd be like, fine, I'll send you off to boarding school.
Mhm.
You can easily see him being motivated. It's like, you don't want this. I want it. It's too difficult. Let's just call it quits. That's when you have a steadfast character or steadfast relationship. The problem is really just the source of drive. And the solution is that which will resolve the source of drive, that will resolve the drive. We'll turn it off. So the drive is what keeps him going or motivates, and the solution is what demotivates or,
Like sending him off to live with relatives.
Right. But it wouldn't be, that would be the response. It would be like, he makes it really difficult for him to parent, and the father makes it really difficult for the child to, to live with him. You could easily see them both just sort of saying, "Fine, I want to go live someplace else," and then and that would resolve the conflict, but they resolve the relationship problem that they have as they develop that bond that they need. Going from the disinterested father, who's sort of an absent participant, to an active participant, on a day-to-day basis.
And that's because it's a positive, growing relationship, right?
Right.
Which is cool, because then the catalyst and inhibitor, the commitment part, it doesn't get them more at odds with each other. It's actually, when he's committed, it's like that brings them closer together.
Right.
And then when he's thinking about what's best for the kid,
it lets him maybe
slows
let him
down.
go, which
Yeah.
is not the best thing for
the relationship. Yeah, it's cool. All right, I'm sold.
Cool. Great. Well, I think that's it. That wraps it up. Thank you, guys. And we have Solid 17 next month. Oh, rousing comedy again.
Well, it's part of the comedy.